Some people are suggesting it should go further, though, and it should be compulsory and mandatory for everyone. We're now joined by Professor Julian Savulescu from Oxford University, who says as long as the vaccine is safe, it should be compulsory to have it. Duncan Stevenson from the Royal Society for Public Health, who thinks making it mandatory could actually do more harm than good and risk a backlash against the vaccine. And Dr. Bharat Pankhania, who says as long as people are fully informed, it shouldn't need to be compulsory. Good to talk to all of you. Obviously, the idea of a vaccine that can protect us, to make us safe to get back to work, which would be so much better for society and economy and for everyone, is what we want. Why do you think, actually, Professor Julian Savulescu, that actually it should be compulsory?
Well, whether it's compulsory will depend on three things. Firstly, the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine, the gravity of the problem, and the safety and effectiveness of other strategies, such as a selective lockdown or voluntary vaccination. But given what we've been told, that 500,000 people would have died, and we're told that 200,000 have died from lockdown, it's an extremely grave situation. And if the vaccine is safe, it's like putting on a seatbelt. Seatbelts are mandatory. They reduce mortality by 50%, and they sometimes kill the occupant or cause serious injuries. But because they're so safe, and the problem is so serious, we make them compulsory.
I have lots of response to this morning. Yesterday, it was a very positive response from our viewers when we said, would you volunteer to be tested? However, the idea of making it mandatory has changed the tone of it specifically. And I think one of the concerns, and this is a concern that I know lots of people have, this is for you, Professor Savulescu, has come from Janet on Twitter. She said, I've lived long enough to see vaccines go wrong. It's too fast for my liking, so it's a no for me. Everyone should be able to make up their mind about their own body. And the whole process has been very, very quick. Admittedly, there's been lots of funding has been put here to try and find these vaccines quickly. But the speed of which it's come about will be concerning to some people, like Janet, who has seen some vaccines in the past go wrong.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with that concern. And we've never had a successful vaccine against the coronavirus. So the safety is a real issue, and we should be having a good, hard look at that. But this is a different situation where large numbers of people are dying, both from the virus and also the strategy. What people don't realise is that we're going to have a large number of cancer deaths over many years because of delayed treatment. Already the estimates are 200,000 people will die. So, the costs of going slow are also significant, and that has to be balanced in this case.
Duncan Stevenson, Professor Savulescu's comparison with a seatbelt is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there are people who think that in some situations, seatbelts do more harm than good. But in most situations, they are the best thing and reduce loss of life and serious injury. So is that what we're looking at here, do you think? That actually there might be some people who are either uncomfortable about the vaccine or indeed may have, reactions to it, but for the greater good, everybody should get it?
Yes, I think the comparison with seatbelts is an interesting one. And I think the reason that we kind of are less inclined and think that compulsory vaccination should be a last resort is that it would be difficult to enforce. When you're wearing a seatbelt, you're in a car, you're driving around. If you're not wearing it, you'll be stopped and pulled over. If you're not vaccinated, what is the enforcement? What is the penalty that is levied on people who don't get a vaccination? And where we've seen mandatory vaccination in the past, the penalties can be regressive in nature. So it could be stopping people's benefits, or it could be not allowing them to attend school or the workplace. And that regressive nature tends to disproportionately affect those people who already have poor health and are facing health inequality. So
But there might be some people that would argue that actually, if you're not vaccinated, then, you haven't got the right to go to school because you're potentially putting others at risk, or you haven't got the right to go to work. There would be people that would argue that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the second reason is that it's not just about the enforcement, but it's about the way that we do this. You know, we know that there is a sizable minority of people who are probably vaccine hesitant when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccination because it's new. But we need to better understand them and work with them. The most effective vaccination programs are by consent, not by compulsion.
Dr. Pancania, one of your concerns as well is, as we were listening to Kate Bingham talk about the fact that people would get it first would be the vulnerable, those who have underlying health conditions, but also those from the BAME communities, because there's been a high prevalence of them suffering from COVID. You have concerns with that as a sort of a starting point for this, don't you?
My concerns are that we should profile all at-risk people, and having identified the at-risk population, we determine that they will be offered the vaccine before others. So we've already identified the older, people with comorbidities, and then the BAME group also come in the category of at-risk. Therefore, they would be included, but it shouldn't be, I am targeting just BAME. We target all at-risk people to give to them the vaccine. And I'm very much in favor of giving it voluntarily. I have a lot of experience with the MMR issues, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. And when you talk to the patients properly, carefully, sincerely, transparently, you always carry them with you. And this is the important bit, the clear messages. And if you have clear, sincere, transparent messages, you won't need compulsion.
Let's talk to Dr. Sarah Jarvis, who's in the studio with us as well. Sarah, Ella Rose makes an interesting point on Facebook. She says, forcing people to have vaccines is the first step to taking people's rights away. I am vaccinated. However, it's my freedom of choice, and I'll fight to keep my freedom of choice. There is a fear that people feel like if they're being forced into this vaccine, is there something we don't know about it? Surely the way Duncan's describing it, let people understand exactly why it's going to benefit them and the community, is a much better way of going.
I couldn't agree more, and I would much, much prefer to go down that route. One of the things we need to bear in mind, though, is that vaccination is not just for us, it's for other people. So as a doctor, there is no way that I would ever suggest to somebody that they needed to have chemotherapy or surgery that I knew would save their life. If they were competent to consent, mentally competent to consent, then of course they have a right to refuse anything, even if it might kill them. The big difference we've got here, of course, is that this isn't just you, it's a bigger picture. We've done the most amazing thing during lockdown as a society. We've all put ourselves in really challenging situations. A lot of people have given up an enormous amount, not because they were likely to get ill, but because they knew that we needed to protect the most vulnerable. And that's
it's a
what
different situation,
about.
though, isn't it, Dr. Jarvis? That's the difference. It's a different situation. There's one thing, however difficult and however devastating it might be to put yourself financially at risk, to inconvenience yourself, to perhaps give yourself mental health challenges. And I guess another thing to think, well, I'm putting something in my body that I don't 100% feel confident about.
I absolutely get that. I would argue, having seen the size of the mental health problems that have come out during lockdown, that actually people have gone to extreme.
No, you're right. You're right.
But the big difference here, I'd much prefer to see it done voluntarily. My biggest concern is that when, for instance, in Australia, say, they've stopped children from or parents from accessing preschool, or they've stopped some of the financial benefits for parents if they hadn't had their children vaccinated. What that's done is to inflame the anti-vaxxers. Now, the World Health Organization has said that vaccine hesitancy, which is basically a polite way of saying anti-vaxxers, they've described them as one of the top 10 single biggest threats to global health in the last year, or in 2018.